Well, it's October, it's AVM Awareness Month, and I thought it was about time I put my story out there. Take it back to the beginning, pre-diagnosis. It was late 2001, and I was living with my now ex-husband, and I had a series of 3 really excruciating headaches. I didn't go to emergency. Hindsight, probably should have, but I can remember one day pulling home, and I pulled into the carport, went to get out of my car, and I was hit with this pain so intense. I dropped my knees on the concrete. I couldn't get up. I couldn't go in the house. I spent the next 2 days in bed crying and throwing up and crying some more. The pain was absolutely insane. And again, I didn't go to the hospital. I should have. They think now that that was the first hemorrhage that I had. I did go to my family doctor, though, and I told her all my symptoms and what had happened. And she suggested going for a CT scan just to rule anything out nasty. She thought that they were migraines and gave me some sample pills to take home in case I had another episode of it. So off I went on my merry way. She sent the requisition to the hospital, and it took about 6 months to get the CT scan because it was non-urgent. So I went up for I think a couple of days before the CT, I called my doctor's office and said, look, I haven't had to use these pills. I haven't had another episode. I think I'm okay. Should I cancel it or should I still go? They suggested I keep the appointment and go just to be sure and to make sure there was nothing crazy going on. So I kept the appointment and I went up for the CT scan. I remember going into the room and I was talking with the technician and I asked them, I said, hey, how long is this going to take? And they said, well, your doctor will get the results in about 7 to 10 days. And I said, oh, okay. So they finished the CT scan. I got in my car, went back to work, and I walked into my office. My phone rang, I think right away. It was my doctor's office telling me to come in because they had my results and wanted to go over them with me. I can still remember that feeling in my gut. Absolute terror. I knew something obviously was wrong. The tech had told me a week to 10 days. My doctor was telling me to come right away. That just couldn't be good news. So I went over to my doctor's office. I was shaking and I was crying even before I got there. I went in and my doctor said to me, told me what I had. She says the CT results had discovered a mass. It's called an arterial venous malformation. And I don't even know what else she said to me that day. What I do remember is she told me to come back in about a week after the shock had worn off and I was able to absorb a little bit more. So a little bit more information. So that's what I did. I went home. I stopped at work to let my now ex-husband, then boyfriend, know what had happened. And I was sobbing uncontrollably. I couldn't stop. I was terrified. I got a ride home. And then I had to call my dad and tell him. And of course, because I didn't know much, I couldn't tell anybody much. I just knew I had a mass in my brain. And that the doctor was sending me to see some specialist in Vancouver. I remember spending, I don't know the timeline now because it's, 2002 now. It was May 24th, 2002, I got diagnosed with AVM, which I just found out. Those of you who know me know that is just new news to me. I had no idea. And, but anyways, so everything's sort of fuzzy, but I know for the next few months, I was kind of a basket case, and at the time there was no Facebook, there was no Survivors Network, there was nothing out there for me to reach out to and to lean on people and to hold on to them. I was alone, and I Googled, and that's the biggest mistake I made was I Googled, and I scared the hell out of myself. There was so much out there on the web that wasn't accurate and was just me reading all this stuff and having nobody to talk to and these days I have an AVM group on my Facebook that I created in Facebook, and it's a support group, and I have people, and I know when people are first diagnosed, they're scared and they don't understand. One of the first things I tell them is that stay the hell away from Google. Talk to people who have it, who have family who have it, because talk to your doctors, because Googling is just going to send you down this path of terror, because it just, there's information out there, but it's not all solid information. So that's what I warn them of now, because that was something that scared me. There was the MSN, if anybody remembers them, the MSM groups in the chat rooms, and I did find this wonderful lady, Deneen, who I am still friends with today, and she was a huge support to me back then. She was my first connection with somebody else who had an AVM. She lives in the States, and we connected over the internet, over MSN groups, and we're still in contact today, and I'm very thankful for her. Skip ahead a few months. I was diagnosed in May, and then August I finally got into the specialist in Vancouver. Made the trek down to Vancouver. They did an angiogram the day before my appointment just to get some more information on it. I hate the angiogram. I hope to God I never have to have another one. They go in, they put a needle into your artery in your groin, and then they go up into your brain, into the veins and arteries in your brain, and they shoot dye in there. And the reason they do that is to figure out the flow through the AVM and what's all involved and all that stuff. So I had that done, and then I went in to see Dr. Redicop, and we went over treatment options available to me. And the only ones that they do for these is they do a surgery to remove them. They do embolization, which is going through that same groin up into the brain and shooting glue, not dye, into. They shoot glue to close off those arteries and veins, and basically kill off the blood flow to the AVM, and then after a few of those, it's not a one-time treatment. You have to go in for a few, and then you're AVM free. And the last one is Gamma Knife. Surgery and Gamma Knife weren't options for me because of size and location, so he suggested doing an embolization. He did attempt one embolization. I woke up to discover it had failed. He said that because of the arteries and the veins, the size, the location, and the active brain tissue involved in my AVM, it just wasn't safe to treat it because I'm relatively healthy. And if he had gone ahead, chances are I wouldn't be healthy anymore. I would most likely have a massive hemorrhage and stroke on the table, and probably wake up paralyzed, or worse, not wake up at all. So the decision was made for me that there would be no treatments. No, I did get second opinions, and for the first few years it was all the same. I talked to Toronto Western Hospital, which is on the east, which is also one of the best in the country. I talked to Calgary at that time, and nobody wanted to touch it for the same reasons as Dr. Redicop. So I had to learn to live life with the knowledge that I had this thing inside my brain. I was told and reminded that I'd had it since birth. They don't know what causes them, but they can happen anywhere in the body. I know people who have them in their face, in their lungs, in their heart, in their extremities, in their uterus, spine. You can have them anywhere. Dr. Redcup told me that they don't know, but they think they might just be leftover menstrual cycle from when you're being formed in mama's belly. But again, they don't know what causes them. They just know they're there. And most people don't find out about them until there's an episode of rupture or something, a seizure. There's a lot of people that have seizures with AVMs. I won't get seizures because of mine. It's not in the right location of the brain. So I'm thankful for that, because I know people who have many, many seizures. And it's either from the AVM itself or from scar tissue after the AVM was removed. I won't get that, thankfully. And so I spent the next few months trying to figure out how I now was going to live my life, because I had this time bomb in my head. And I spent the first few months well, probably more than a few months, but the first while in panic mode, basically. I was terrified. Um, I was worried that it was gonna explode and I was gonna die. Um, I remember my boyfriend at the time, who's now my ex-husband, we were living together, and I put that man through hell. He couldn't do anything. He wasn't allowed to go to the store without me. Nothing. I picked fights with him over everything. If he was going to the store, I would pick a fight. If he couldn't go out with his friends. He couldn't do anything because I couldn't be left alone. And I treated him horribly. Why he stuck with me and ended up marrying me is beyond me. But I was pretty miserable. But I understand why now. And I think he knew then too, and he understood what was going on. It doesn't excuse the behavior, but it explains it. And it lasted for a while because I was scared. It's a terrifying thing. I know people say, well, you could get hit by a bus crossing the street tomorrow, and they're right, you can. But I also have this added extra thing, this little time bomb that sits inside my brain that may or may not go off. The reality is I could live to be 115 and never have another bleed, or I could die as I'm videoing this. It's just the reality. And learning to live your life with that kind of knowledge is scary, and it's hard. I went back and forth with the neurosurgeon about pregnancy too. That's a hard one for me. Pregnancy is dangerous. The increase in your blood in your body, the stress of pregnancy, the pressure of labor. It was all really dangerous, and it wasn't recommended that a woman get pregnant when she has one. I struggled with that for a long time. When I was younger, most of you that know me know, when I was younger, I did have before I knew about the AVM, I did have a successful pregnancy, and I delivered a healthy baby boy that at the time life was messy, and I didn't even have a job, and I decided I gave him up for adoption. Found him some wonderful parents, and I don't regret it. But after hearing about my AVM and being told I shouldn't get pregnant, it was really hard because I thought that I had given away my only chance to be a mom without knowing it was my only chance. And I was young, and I didn't have a choice at that time. But that's the one I made, and so then they're telling me that I shouldn't do it, and I don't know if it's my stubborn or my defiant nature, but I was adamant I was going to have a baby, and I went back and forth, and I'm not sure how much I actually listened to the neurosurgeon and how much I just heard him telling me no when that wasn't actually what he was saying, because it took a while, I think about 2 years, but I finally heard him say to me that I could have a baby. I just had to be monitored closely. I wasn't allowed to go into labor. I'd have to have a scheduled C-section a couple weeks early. And if I had even the hint of labor, I was to go directly to the hospital. Do not pass go, just get your butt there. And so I said, okay, great. So Keith and I talked about it, and we decided to have a baby and risk it. And I had a fantastic pregnancy. I actually very much enjoyed being pregnant that time, and gave birth to a happy, healthy, amazing little boy in August of 2006. And it was the best decision that I've ever made, was to have him and to risk it, because he is so worth it. Nothing makes me happier than hanging out with him, doing nothing, eating junk food, watching stupid boy movies. That is the best thing. We decided not to have any more after that we didn't really want to risk it again, tempt fate, so to speak. And I think having Ben also settled me into living again and not panicking all the time. I used to, for the first couple of years after diagnosis, I was at an emergency, every week or two because I was terrified my headache would increase a little bit. Well, if I would go running up there panicking. I've had so many CT scans that it's really not even funny. It's probably not good for me either, but I would panic. And I think after I had Ben, life kind of settled a little bit for me, and the panic wasn't there so much anymore. And I learned just to enjoy the moments. And that's where I am now, is I enjoy the moments a lot more than I think I would have if I didn't have this vascular disorder. But I do. So life went on. My marriage fell apart. I think in part it was because of the AVM. Some of my symptoms are a constant headache. I have brain fog. I don't have energy like I used to before those 3 episodes prior to diagnosis that led to my diagnosis. My energy level decreased significantly. I'm not allowed to do a lot of things that get your blood pressure going and your heart rate up, just because those should be kept low. You're not allowed to do anything that thins the blood. But I was lazy, and lazy for a reason. I still am. Not as active as I could be, but I just don't have a lot of energy for it. I'm working on it, and it's something I do work on all the time. But I think that the AVM and my learning to live with it and my ex-husband trying to figure it out, I do think that contributed to the demise of our marriage. It was not the sole cause by any means, but I definitely believe it was a contributing factor. So I left my ex-husband and moved in on my own, and we share our son, but my symptoms are pretty mild. I suffer from headache 24/7, 365. I have a lack of energy. That got worse after my hemorrhage in 2014. And I have some left arm or left side issues. There's some pain and some numbness. I also had some nerve damage in my elbow. That's since been corrected, and the numbness and the pain has decreased significantly, but I still get little bouts of it. And I have this wonderful thing, I believe they call it a brute. And it is probably the most annoying part of this AVM. What it is it's the sound of the blood flowing through my AVM. It's like a whooshing noise that goes in my head, and it gets really loud sometimes. And I'll be lying in bed trying to sleep, and that damn thing won't shut up. And I've literally caught myself yelling at myself to shut up. Like, I'll be yelling in bed trying to fall asleep. Would you shut the F up? Please just stop, and crying because it won't. Or I'll be out somewhere. I can remember I was talking to a salesperson one day. I was at the store, and I was looking for some items, and I was talking to them, and it started going just randomly, and it was so loud I could barely hear, and I just blurred, "Shut the fuck up!" And this poor salesman looked at me and said, "I'm so sorry," and she just walked away, and I was like, oh my God. And I felt horrible. I wasn't even talking to her, and I didn't even realize I was saying it, but I said it. And that's a really annoying symptom that I wish would go away. And I've heard people say that theirs have gone away after surgery or after this or after that, but because those aren't options for me, I think I'll be living with the brute for the rest of my life. And it annoys me to no end. But thankfully, it's not daily. That is a blessing. What else my AVM has given me? It has given me this online family around this globe that I love so much. I rely on them. I lean on them when I'm having bad days or when I'm just feeling sorry for myself. They're there, and I listen to their struggles, and they listen to mine, and it's a community that I don't really know what I would do without. They're amazing. And skip forward, life went on pretty regularly and normal, and I can remember December 3rd, 2014. I woke up that morning and my head hurt really bad when I got up, and I jumped in the shower. It was a payroll processing day. That's what I do. I'm a payroll administrator. It was a payroll processing day, and I knew I couldn't call in sick. The boss would be so pissed off at me. So, and not to mention, I needed to get paid too. So I had my shower. I remember throwing up in the bathroom, getting dressed and thinking, oh my God, this is going to be horrible. I was eating Tylenol already like candy. I went to work that morning and I got the payroll done, and I hit the button and sent it to the bank, packed up my desk, and I walked into my boss's office and I said, look, payroll's gone to the bank. I am not well. I've been fighting all day, this headache, and I need to go to the hospital and get some stronger pain meds and then go home and go to bed just to kick it. I'll be in tomorrow to finish the payroll reports and get everything put away and packed up. But it's done. Everybody's going to get paid Friday. So she said, okay, well, just go take care of yourself and keep me posted. We'll see you tomorrow. So I got in my car and I drove to the hospital, and I wanted to get something a little stronger. All I had was Tylenol, and I thought maybe I could get some T3s or something a little stronger just to knock it out, because the Tylenols weren't working. I don't even know how many I took that morning. I can't remember now. But that's what I went to the hospital for, and that's actually what I told the lady. I said, I'm not drug seeking, but this is what I'm here for. I have an AVM, and I've had a headache all day, and I can't shake it. I've been taking Tylenol like it was gum, and I need something stronger. And I said, and I'd hope to get it in pill form so I can drive home and take it there. And she said, well, we can't just give it to you. We're going to, the doctor will examine you and probably send you for a CT scan, which I knew they would. So I went in, and of course, they sent me for a CT scan, and I can remember waiting, and nobody was coming to see me. And the CT scan had been over, I don't even know how long, I want to say half an hour, maybe even an hour, and still nobody had come to see me. And I was irritated because I just wanted to go home. I just wanted my jammies and my bed and make sure my dog was okay, get her fed. Ben was with his dad that day. But I just wanted to get the hell out of there. And I remember the doctor walking past me. She was young, like must have just been out of med school. I always refer to her as the 12-year-old because that's what she looked like to me. But I remember her walking by me, and I said, excuse me, doctor, I need to get out of here. Can somebody get the IV out of me so I can go home? And she looked at me and said very casually, well, you're not going anywhere. It's bleeding. And she kept walking. Well, I swear to God, I wanted to grab her by the ponytail and yank her back and fill me in, because I was like, well, what the hell do you mean it's bleeding? And she just walked away. That's how I found out I was having another hemorrhage in my brain. And I just plunked down in the chair in the emergency room, and I just sat there, and I was like, what the hell? And then the rest of it is all kind of a blur. I don't really remember much more of that day or the next few days, really. I know my dear Rachel, one of my best friends, came to the hospital that day and sat with me waiting. They were medevacing me out to Vancouver, and she came and she sat with me waiting for the medevac for the ambulance to take me to the plane. And she sat with me and helped me call my dad and call Ben's dad and let them know what was going on. She made sure the nurse knew I was scared of flying, so they gave me an Ativan on top of all the morphine I was on. I don't think I would have noticed I was even in the plane. I was so stoned. But she stayed with me, and then not only that, she came to my house. She got my dog, took my dog home for the entire time I was in hospital, and she got my car home too. And she was a godsend. And I'm so thankful she was able to be there for me, because really there's nobody else. Anyways, so they medevaced me. I can remember telling my dad, and it was horrible. They flew me to Vancouver. My aunt was there when I got to the hospital. She stayed with me for a little bit while they got me settled into a room. And my dad arrived the next day. And he sat with me that entire time. I was in VGH for 6 days, I think, in the neuro ICU. And I think I was there 6 days with a small, they said it was a small bleed. Actually, I should say, I haven't actually had a conversation with my neurosurgeon since the bleed. But it was a small hemorrhagic stroke, it's called, a brain hemorrhage. And I spent the next few days on morphine and in so much pain. And I don't really want to do that again because it really kind of hurts. And my dad sat by my bedside the entire time. He'd go home, go to the hotel and sleep. And he just sort of hung out with me and kept me company, even though I wasn't really doing anything. I was just lying in bed, half asleep or asleep for days. I remember, I think it was the day before I got out. This is my favorite memory of that whole trip, like it was a vacation. My whole stay at the hospital. I remember they used to come around and they'd do rounds, and if anybody who's ever had anything going on with their brain in the hospital, they know that they come around and they ask you your name, the date, where you are, what day it is, like they ask you all kinds of questions just to make sure you're still coherent and you're all there. And I remember all these little baby doctors, they come around for their rounds. They're all the neurosurgical interns, and they come around and they're standing there. Must have been, I don't know, at least 10 of them, probably more. And they're standing and they're about, again, 12 years old. And they're standing in my room, and one of them says to me, asked me what day it was, and I just smiled and I started laughing and I said, it's shower day. I hadn't had a shower in 4 or 5 days. I was gross. I felt disgusting and my hair was yucky. I stunk, like it was bad, and I was really excited it was shower day. They had no sense of humor. They missed the entire joke and they just looked at me all stone-faced. And so I corrected and I told them the date and followed along with their little rules. But I was like, just laugh, guys. Like, have a little fun. But they just didn't. So that was my last hemorrhage. And that was December 3rd, 2014. After I got home, I was scared again. And I was back and forth to the hospital again every time my head hurt a little bit more for a couple of months until I figured out how to be okay with it again. And I have. And life goes on. I mean, it's there. There's nothing I can do about it. There's people out there who have the arterial venous malformation that are dealing with a hell of a lot worse than I am. I really am one of the lucky ones. My health is pretty good. I did get an offer for a neurosurgeon to remove the AVM. They were going to do a surgery in Calgary and take it out. I can't remember, I think it was a 60% chance it would rupture, and that was just too high. I don't want to leave Ben without a mom at his age, and so I declined the surgery and thought, I'm just going to go and live my life, and that's what I do. So it's there, it's a part of me, and it's been with me since I was born. So the chances of it rupturing go up every year. But I'm just going to keep holding on to good health and know that I'm okay. So that's my AVM story. Have a good day.